Welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast, your home for all things Chelsea FC. Nick, Dan, and myself cover all the match reviews from the latest Chelsea matches. We cover the team news and even throw you some exclusive interviews. Thank you already for being an awesome listener. And you know what? Let's jump right in. And we're back, Chelsea fans, with another episode of the London is Blue podcast, bringing it to you from all over the country. We are about as spread out as we really can be. I mean, we've got Dan and Mike this morning. Nick, unfortunately, due to work travels, unable to be here. Not going to take the low road and take pot shots at him like other people. But anyways, Mike, hanging out in the Pacific Northwest. Early match yesterday, huh?
Yeah, super early match, and I had a loaded day. I celebrated Christmas early with the in-laws, so I had a lot of baking and cooking to do. So I was kind of able to, roll with the punches and then move on with my day a bit.
You took quite a few punches in the morning, Dan. Back to flipping coasts. You're on the East Coast, the southeast corner this time.
Yeah, my Christmas wish is to travel maybe just a little less coastally. So that probably will happen as things settle down. But no, it's nice to be on the East Coast with family and friends and enjoying the holidays, which I know, Brandon, you're doing from the middle of BFE, Iowa.
No, there's a city here. Okay, didn't grow up on a farm. Thank you. Appreciate that, guys.
No, it's like Smallville, right? Clark Kent lived down the road.
Probably in a bigger city than you are right now, Dan. But anyways, let's not get too far off the beaten path. Dan Levene is joining us, a super OG guest for us. So excited to have you back, Dan. How you doing?
Fantastic, thanks. Really good to be here.
We are so excited, and we're looking forward, and this is just completely shameless plug on our part, to seeing you in London when we're there next week. We're only 6 days away from being wheels down at Heathrow, thankfully. So excited to be there. Usually a great time sharing some curry with you, Dan, or something delicious that you've taken us to.
We always put on a big show for you when you come to town. When you come in, you'll see, if you go to Trafalgar Square, there's a great big tree there. That's just there for you. All those lights down Oxford Street, they're not normally there. We've put them for you. And, we like to make a bit of a show when you turn up.
The diplomacy is just top notch. We really do appreciate that. All right. Well, as we get into this, Dan, we continue with the iTunes reviews.
Yeah, we had 2 this week, and there might be more, but actually there's a Apple issue with podcast reviews displaying. And I can say that because I don't work for Apple this Christmas, or actually I didn't last Christmas, but I can say that on air. But we did get 2 for Nate Caribs and Red Dude 10, leaving some 5-star love on iTunes. And I know that we also did, Brandon, in the last week after we recorded, both Katie and Vignesh also left us a little love on Patreon, dropping some love there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of support we're getting from this community is fantastic, which is why here we are on December 23rd across the country, traveling to families, and we're still doing it. And I just want a huge shout out goes to our community of Chelsea fans that we plugged into for your support, because like I said, it's what keeps us going, especially after matches like yesterday. So with that being said, we are going to roll a real quick ad, and after that, talk to you about classic football shirts. All right, and on top of that, a huge reminder to those of you in London, we will be doing a live podcast from Classic Football Shirts in London. Reach out to us if you are interested in that. Otherwise, for all of our beautiful listeners, you can use London Pod on their website to save money. Genuinely super awesome gear and clothing. And they just partnered up to do this kind of Remember the Shirt campaign on BT Sport. Rio Ferdinand was the first interview. It's on YouTube. Honestly, like from a fan's perspective, they're doing just awesome stuff that is not sent to commercialize us, but to like plug into what it is like us as a fan wants. So again, check it out, classicfootballshirts.co.uk, London Pod, save yourself some money. All right. And,
Brandon, one other thing that we should mention just before we go, because they're taking care of the beer bill when we go do this live podcast, which is going to be
now everyone wants
really
to be there.
Time. Yeah, just pointing it out. I think they're also making sure during the live podcast event, they're going to, beforehand, they're going to take most of their Chelsea kind of allotment of, kits and make sure they're there in their London location, because they have a Manchester and London location. So even if you aren't going for the live podcast in the day in or around the time that we're doing it, they're probably going to have more Chelsea stock in London than they typically do, because their warehouse is based out of Manchester. So really cool opportunity to look at some of the classic stuff that they have put together. So very apt naming of the sponsor, but yeah, check it out.
All right, we will do. And a quick programming note before we jump into the match reviews, that this will be our only podcast. This won't be a two-part one, unfortunately. Spending time with our family, so we appreciate your understanding. We are going to try to get one more out post-Christmas, maybe around the Watford or maybe some other special content. Either way, we're going to try to get one more out. Just want to help set expectations for this Christmas week, because there's probably a lot of you traveling that want to listen while you're in the car. All right, deep breath. I need to bring it back. We need to focus for this match review. We'll try to keep it on track, but honestly, no promises. It was Leicester City in the Premier League at Stamford Bridge this past Saturday, December 22nd. In case you missed it, Blues 0, Foxes 1. I'm going to keep on moving from this, Dan Dormer, and I want you to punch through the lineup to kind of tee up our conversation for today.
Yeah, no surprise. Kepa Arrizabalaga starts in goal. We had the center back pairing of David Luiz and Antonio Rudiger, flanked by everyone's favorite Marcos Alonso and Cesar Azpilicueta on the left and right flanks, respectively. Jorginho, Kanté, and Kovacic made up our midfield three. And then Pedro Willian, both flanked Eden Hazard as the false nine. We saw a bench of Willy Caballero, Zappacosta, Gary Cahill due to Christensen having a slight muscle injury, Cesc Fabregas, Ross Barkley, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and Giroud. We did see a 61st minute double sub of Giroud and Loftus-Cheek. That was excellent. And then we had Cesc Fabregas at the 75th minute come in for Jorginho.
Dan Levene, when you got the lineup sheet at the Bridge, false nine for the third match in a row. Any real surprises for you upon seeing this lineup?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. I think a lot of people have obviously got their own frustrations with Chelsea's lack of quality at the front end. But I think a lot of people also expected to see something at least more direct tried for a team as low in the table as Leicester are. They're not a team that's going to really worry about relegation, but they're the sort of team that Chelsea should be beating. So trying Hazard there as a false nine again was already setting some alarm bells off before the game started, I think, for a lot of people.
I guess so. With the false nine thing, it's kind of, I thought people liked it. I thought this was a great thing. We used it to beat City, then we used it again, and we won. And then now all of a sudden people, I guess, aren't as happy. Is that just because, I guess from your standpoint, Dan Levene, that it's just not the best way to engage Eden Hazard for Chelsea?
Yeah, I think that's a large part of it. He's obviously a man of very, very many talents. And I'm not going to knock his abilities as a striker. He can do it, and he's shown that he can do it. But that's not his job. He's a lot of people like to see, or don't like to see, square pegs in round holes. And the way to get the best out of a player is surely to play him in his most natural position. Of course, the difficulty is that we don't have a naturally gifted, top-quality striker at Chelsea at the moment, I'm afraid. If only we did. But I'd just like to think that we had one good enough to play proper number 9 against Leicester.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Mike Flynn, as we run through the stats, Chelsea was 72% possession, 17 shots, 5 on target, compared to Leicester's 8 shots, 3 on target, 917 touches, 692 passes, back up to that, you're going to hate me now, but sorry ball type style of play. Leicester with 37 clearances, Chelsea with 9 corners, no yellow cards, 3 offsides. Anyways, it's just overwhelming amounts of possession. Probably, 17 shots is quite a bit. I mean, based on the stat sheet, it seems like Chelsea did more than enough to win the match, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, overall, in watching the match, we had the opportunities, we just did not finish. And I think what we're seeing this season is that if we're able to score 2 goals, we win matches. And when we're not able to score, or I mean, obviously, but if we just get one, or we just don't show up, we just really struggle. Everybody's looking at the Alonso, miss, but I think, both Willian and Hazard had very great opportunities early on that they kind of just rolled into the keeper. We're doing what we need to do. We're just not being clinical. And I think when you look at, 9 corners and our inability typically even to beat the first defender, we are not taking advantage of set pieces. And I think that's really biting us.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and run through the goals so we can knock it out of the way. 51st minute, Jamie likes to party Vardy. Assist James Maddison. This is, Dan Levene, pretty much your typical counterattack, right? They just caught us spread out. Vardy found some space, turned to defender, and just smashed it home in the side netting.
Yeah, it was a bit of that, but there are wider concerns here, and we've seen this quite a lot, I think, in recent weeks. The difficulty that Chelsea seem to be having in sort of comprehensively defending as a unit. I don't know where it is, where the minds melt all of a sudden, but you see people running across each other in different directions, whether there's some possibility that the players are going zonal instead of actually covering the man. Whatever the case is, it's just not firing properly, and they are very, very leaky at the back at the moment.
Mike Flynn, resident center back. That probably had to have been frustrating for you to kind of see that the team kind of fall apart in that situation. Yeah,
it's the classic trap. We knew that, Leicester kind of had one trick, and that's Vardy's speed. And, you're going to try and, play a long ball or catch us in the counter. I think it kind of falls down to the possession that we're playing. Sometimes at the top, I feel we get lulled into a sense of security, and you see Luiz or Rudiger step up deep and try and force a pass in, and it gets intercepted, and they're in the opponent's third, and it's really easy to put a ball up over the top and kind of catch us wanting. We have to do better. All
right. Well, let's go ahead and dig into it a little bit. So after the final whistle, Dan Levene, you sent this tweet. It was your full-time match summary. It said Chelsea 0, Leicester 1. Vardy over fussy and directionless while level. Undercommitted and lacking gumption when behind. This was poor from Chelsea. Should have been a relatively simple 3 points. Instead, it is Sarri's first home defeat as Chelsea boss. So I want to talk a little bit about the directionless part. Is that about the final third, or more as like a team holistically?
I think it's a bit of both. The final third is somewhere where direction has been repeatedly lacking for Chelsea of late, and we covered the business about there not being a quality striker there. People so much passing to the side, and I think people are getting a bit fed up of this, just almost passing by the ton, all for no perceptible gain. But I think that the lack of direction in the team as a whole is a little bit of a concern at the moment. We've talked a lot about Sarri ball as the season's progressed and what we're expecting to see. I'm not really sure what Sarri ball is at this stage, I've got to be honest. But what I do see is a team that is playing it less good than they were at the start of the season. And that's a real worry, I think.
Dan Dormer, the other Dan, little Dan-to-Dan action. What are your thoughts on that? What are you thinking from Sarri ball? I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter about what the hell Sarri ball even is, if it can even produce an end result. I think there's just a lot of questions being asked right now.
Yeah, and I think the vertical tiki-taka, which is the basis for what Sarri's possession game and movement of the ball is, and you go back and look at these Napoli highlight videos from the past 1, 2, 3 seasons when Sarri was in charge, and there were times that Jorginho was able to be a little bit more flexible going forward with the ball, and part of the problem is not having a focal point or focal points of the attack and the forward realm. Leicester were very happy to allow us to move up and down the flanks as they did in the match against us. So and it was just a little annoying when, you have two banks of four that are defending in fantastic shape. I think the credit to Leicester has to be there and Claude Puel for maintaining a level of rigidity that just absolutely stifled the attack and made it so when it got anywhere near the outside of the box that there was really not a direct way forward or a path into it. And we were just, it's another kind of opportunity of just being really wasteful with, what we kind of were putting together. When you think about the fact that, we've, scored the third most goals this season, tied with Arsenal for goals from inside the box. If we can't get inside the box, we're usually not scoring a goal because we've only scored 4 from outside the box. And that is 5th place in the league. So if we're thinking about how we go from being a 4th place team to a 3rd place team to challenging for 2nd or even 1st, Mike, there's a couple things that we have to address. And one of those is how do we get the ball into the back of the net when it doesn't work on necessarily the ground or getting it to the piece of being inside the box?
Yeah, it's funny. We're playing a false 9, but it seemed like for a good chunk of the game, I was watching crosses get whipped in, and it's just like, in what world are we going to have Hazard or Willian or, Pedro, out jumping Wes Morgan? It's like sometimes out of desperation we're just doing something to do it instead of, making a better pass. Or I feel like very often this year we've lacked another runner going toward the back post, and I feel like just too often we're just trying to just pass that ball around inside the box, and it allows teams to, just be compact in their defense, and we're playing into their hands.
Well, and you saw, and I think it's made its way around Twitter enough times now, the photo from the match yesterday where Eden Hazard is basically surrounded by 3 to 4 to 5 Leicester City, players. We could call them maybe all defenders in this capacity, but the way that he basically, there was no other need to kind of do anything to anybody else. If Eden Hazard is your top goal scorer and your most lethal threat on the pitch, is just he was magnetic for, and really the focus was to snuff him out and to not allow him the opportunity to do his, work his Christmas magic. And, it showed that there was not a good alternative outlet that was going to take a little bit of that pressure on. I think about in American football, you have, a couple wide receivers on a team. If one is so exceptionally better, what tends to happen is the opposition team will just place all their emphasis on making sure that 2 or 3 guys are making sure that person doesn't get the ball. And then what happens after that? And that's what happened today. There was not really a good alternative. And when the people who did have the alternative, like Willian, squared up their shot, it just wasn't clinical enough.
No, you're right.
So I have a question a little bit. And, Dan Levene, we know from experience that watching in person is a very different match than what we see on TV, partially because of replays, partially because of, being in the grounds, you get to absorb a lot more. My question, or you really get to see the full picture the entire time, which we do not. So I'm wondering, maybe optimistically, do you think that Chelsea just aren't seeing the attacking opportunities that Sarri's system creates because they're so used to playing something completely different? Do you feel like Man City are able to kind of pass in behind teams because they've been doing it for a while, while Chelsea still haven't figured out how to create that final chance once they get into the final third? Or is it a little bit just doesn't work?
It is a difficult question, and it's one we'll no doubt look back on in, 6 months, a year's time, when we know what's going on a little bit better one way or the other. There were reservations raised, of course, before Sarri arrived about the suitability of his methods to English football, his system. And of course, we all know that although at Napoli it looked fantastic, it's never actually won anything at all. My main concern at the moment is, as I touched on earlier, that they don't seem to be getting any better at it. If you look at the way they played in the opening few games of the season, they actually look pretty good in some of those. And if you take out the game against Manchester City, which was a triumph of doing things slightly differently and a rather different system, then actually since about Everton, things have been going downhill. The performances have not been great since then, and actually Chelsea have looked less and less adept at playing Sarri ball. Now, that was the 11th of November, so that's 6 weeks ago. And they need to turn a corner, really, and they need to start getting used to a system that they've basically been charged with playing for the rest of their natural,
All right, so moving kind of along that direction, though, as well, the other thing I've seen a lot, Mike, is the players, which are also a big part of the system. So I guess, where do you fall in the argument of, is it the players not being consistent enough or playing to a high enough level, or maybe even being good enough, versus, no, it's actually just a system. Even if we had better players in January, this system is the issue. Do you think that if we had better players, there would be, or I shouldn't say better players, right? If we had different players that really align with Maurizio's system, do you think that we could execute this better?
For sure, hands down. I think, to me, we are missing a focal point in a striker that can really score goals, and we're not getting the production from Morata or Giroud that we need. And maybe this, people will hate me for saying this. I don't think we played that bad yesterday. We did everything we needed to do to win, but knock in 2 goals. And I think that if we had someone that we could, center the attack around, that was, lethal in finishing, we wouldn't be having these discussions. We wouldn't be having these problems, because you know what? We would occasionally concede, but we would just outscore our opponents. I feel like when I watch our team play, it reminds me of, some college basketball in which a smaller team doesn't have a big center that, they can't compete with Duke. So they just pass the ball around the key, sideways, trying to get it in, and it just doesn't work. We slowly pass the ball, 10, 15 yards to the next person. And I think the difference between us and City is that City have the offensive players that know how to unlock and take that ball inside, whereas, sometimes we have players who just don't know what to do with the ball. Conte at times looks very uncomfortable as to, taking that ball directly into the box, and he typically will push it, to the right or the left. I feel like, even Dave sometimes doesn't know, do I just whip in across? It feels like we lack the knowledge or the direction as to how to break down teams. And I think we're falling victim to having way too much possession, and teams just fall back, play D, and know that it's a really good way to catch us on the counter. And if they can, withstand, our poor attempts to get the ball into the box, then they'll be fine.
So I will counter a little bit of that and say that ultimately there was a period, the first half was played very well. And I think the moment after Leicester scored is when it just completely crumbled, and the idea of the structure and the attempts at putting together a true response was missing and lacking. And I know that, Sarri has kind of mentioned the mentality thing, which is not necessarily the best argument to kind of continue to go back to time and time again. But I think where he has been let down just a touch, to say some of it does belong on the responsibility of the player, kind of comparative to the manager. The manager has to, or the coach has to set the team up for success and putting together the right game plan. So there's some thoughts around, should we play more like we did against Man City to, and try to replicate that type of approach to a match? But, if you look at Man City, 50 goals, 332 shots, about a 15% conversion rate. Liverpool have about a 13.5%, 14% conversion rates on shots. And, we have had the second most shots in the Premier League this season, 298, just shy of 300. Then we have the fourth most goals at 35. So there's definitely some, that's just above 11%. So there's an opportunity for those on the pitch to convert more and to, miss kind of less big chances. We're the second most in terms of big chances missed this season. Only Watford have had more big chances missed. So there's just it can't both be failing. It can't be just the manager or just the players. Like, it's a cohesive. It's the whole package right now needs a little bit of tinkering. And I just, my only fear, Dan, is that it's happening at probably the worst time with all the matches that are coming up. And I don't say that as just we're going over there and we'd like to see Chelsea win, but with how quick in succession these matches are going to be, that I would have rather had this type of tinkering required at the beginning of the season rather than in the Christmas fixtures.
Yeah, this is a real crucial time for any campaign going into Christmas. And, there's so much been written about how seasons have been won and lost over the Christmas period. There's been a lot of talk in the last few weeks about players who are perceived to be underperforming and how maybe they should be benched. And I think there's something more important that could be benched, and that's maybe the system. We've seen this before in a side where they're trying to do something that's very complicated. It's a little beyond their technical ability. It's a little beyond the development that they've reached with the manager. And sometimes it's better just to revert back to something they're more familiar with, while they train up maybe in the background on a more advanced system. And of course, it's been done before. This is exactly what Antonio Conte did in his first season with Chelsea. He had a new system that he wanted to bed in, but for the first few weeks and months, he got them playing the way they were used to. And of course, we all know when he switched to the system, when they were properly trained up in it, how successful that was. They went on to win the league. I think the priority now has to be just in getting the points on the board and getting the results, and maybe Sarri Ball should take a bit of a backseat in that.
So this is kind of a dumb question, but can he? Would he? It seems so against the whole reason we signed Maurizio in the first place. The other thing, I remember at the beginning of the season, the players were like, "Oh my gosh, football is fun again. I love this. He just lets us play freely and it's fun." I think that's kind of gone away, which also reminds me that, what's the most fun? Winning. Winning trumps everything. And if you're not winning, just like what has happened a little bit recently, this is where all the questions come from. I mean, it's just kind of a weird thing. I think that there probably is a lot of fatigue in the team, Dan Levene, and I think that he still hasn't really rotated unless we've already, guaranteed progression through a cup competition. Do you see, we were just talking about it before we jumped on, the amount of matches that are coming up in the next 10, 11 days is unheard of. Surely we're going to see more Emerson. We might even see Morata. We might see Callum Hudson-Odoi, maybe even in a rare appearance Ampadu, but for sure Christensen, and probably one more send-off for Cahill before he goes on loan.
Yeah, well, it would be good. I mean, those games, as I say, come thick and fast. And it's not just over Christmas. If you look at what's coming, the games are Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday or Wednesday, Saturday. It's bang, bang, bang like that. And the rotation hasn't really been there. It would be good. It would have been good, particularly against Leicester, to maybe have seen Hudson-Odoi in there. But the rotation just doesn't seem to be there. And the worry is that I don't think that the manager necessarily trusts or rates the players he's not using. We've seen this before with, I don't know if it's necessarily limited to Italian managers, but it's a hallmark often of them, that they like to work with a very, very small group of players. Conte was similar. If he could use the same 11 every week, he would. And Sarri is now starting to do that. But I don't necessarily know whether he's used to the unique demands of English football and how many games there are and how quickly they come. There's no break here. This will go on 2 games a week for basically months to come, and the squad will not be able to put up with that unless he rotates.
I think my hope would be is that, obviously he's got a assistant in Zola, and there's an institutional knowledge of the league around him that hopefully will shepherd him appropriately in that type of rotation. We have seen, I think, a few instances of it, particularly in the midfield. I think the attack is where he's been a little more, and defense has been a little more reluctant to rotate there. I think, with the midfield, he doesn't or hasn't found the perfect three in his mind, even though I think, some fans, many fans will tell you they know what the perfect three is, because obviously fans are not unwilling to share their opinion. But, I think, I guess also maybe structurally, with Morata not firing on all cylinders and Giroud really not adding goals, obviously does well with assists, that, some of these I think are maybe a tad forced by the players, but I think to the point you made too, Dan, that, we've seen Callum Hudson-Odoi shine bright. We've seen him put pace into a situation, and that sometimes makes up for a little, really allows the ball to move at the rate it needs to for unlocking this system. And we're just not seeing maybe the right players on the pitch at the right time, and it's causing a little bit of that's, I think, attributing to that mental breakdown too.
Yeah, and it is a little bit disjointed, isn't it? For those reasons, the way they play together. Sarri was asked after the game about this, and he said that his side was suffering from mental confusion, which is in itself a little bit of a worry, because if he can't get over the intricacies of his system, then that is basically what his Chelsea career will live and die by. But there was something else he said that worried me even more than that. He was asked what the problem was, and he said, if I knew, I would solve the problem before this match. It's difficult to understand, he said, what the problem is. Now, I've seen managers say this before, and it's normally not long before they're out the door. I don't think we're talking about that yet with Sarri. We're a little way off that. But he's got to get his head around what the problem is. And if he can't solve it, then ultimately he will go the same way as everyone else who couldn't solve it.
Well, again, not trying to go in that direction by any means, but as you guys kind of mentioned, that tends to be where we go from this time. It's early days. If you had to look at one thing in January, it seems like this will probably be unanimous that we can only think of having a striker as being the quickest fix. Is there any other position that we think is more important than a striker at this position?
No. Was that an open question, Brandon?
It was. Trying to figure out if there's any other strategy or hints. I mean, the hardest problem though is you can't get a striker in January historically. I don't know what the best transfer option is heading into January, Dan.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And I mean, obviously, we talked with Joe Tweeds last week about the idea of, if a transfer ban does come, what that means and what it looked like for Real Madrid and what it looked like for Atletico Madrid, two larger clubs kind of we're in that category, and how that really can just affect things fully. And so, with the club potentially preparing for something like that with one eye on the summer and maybe thinking you might not get the opportunity to do it, is the Brexit alternative of Callum Wilson and paying extra for him and his multiple ACL repaired ligaments. Is that really what we want to go for? Is that really the standard rafter? There's been the Higuain rumors that will never die as long as Sarri is at Chelsea. And, I think I expect that to be through the season personally, but it's not great. It's not like there's a bevy of really fantastic options, Mike, that we can just, go, we're going to shop the best option, the best store and the best market. And it has all of the wonderful, produce and meats and cheeses that are fine imports from around the world. This is more of the lead up to Christmas Eve and you need to buy the stuff for dinner and there's 5 things left in the aisles and you better hope that one matches exactly what you need. Otherwise you're square peg round hole, as Dan Levene said earlier.
Yeah. Fancy's great and it's nice. And you know what? Our Spanish stallion has not played well. Giroud is, kind of doing what he did in the World Cup, but he doesn't have, a second striker to be able to work off of and, set up. But, I think that, obviously the priority has to be a striker. But then I think we have to then shift our focus to the right wing. When you consider that Willian and Conte have the same amount of goals and I believe assists for us this season, there's a real issue. Because, Conte's obviously stepped his game up in the last few matches. And I just, we're scoring goals from the left. We're not scoring goals from center. If we're working on that, then we need to shift our gaze to getting more goals out of, the top three attackers. And I think, if we can't upgrade at striker, then we have to upgrade at right wing and bring in somebody who can bring in some more explosiveness, maybe some speed, something that's going to have to pull defenders away from the left side to open up Hazard, assuming that we're not playing a false nine the whole time. But yeah, I just, as what people want to say and kind of rip on, Callum Wilson, he looked strong and up for the match when we played him this week. And he looked more into a game and stronger than I've seen Morata play this season. So if he can get in and get a job done, he might, a decent striker might feast off of all these opportunities. When you're looking at 70% possession and 17 shots, if we have somebody who can actually, put a shot on frame as opposed to, shooting the ball out of the stadium like we have, I think we could see a huge difference in what's going on. We could take the pressure off. We get the early goal. We follow that up with a second goal, and then we're talking about playing matches the way City does, where teams are out of it, with 2 goals in the first 20 minutes. That changes the dynamic of games, and I think that, I think that Sarri and the system have struggled a bit, but I think there are relatively easy fixes as to how to proceed, Yeah,
I just hope that we don't mistake a puffed out chest and sighs of exasperation from Callum Wilson as fight, because I actually think that he was just a bit depressed as a little bit of a attacking outlet for Bournemouth in the midweek. So I think, and maybe Dan Levene can offer his opinion. I don't think he's the right solution. I think he's the stopgap solution we continue to see versus buying smart. We were buying kind of in need, and that sometimes desperation just puts you with the wrong player now on a 3, 4, 5 year contract, and you have a harder time excising yourself from that than you would if you just waited to buy the right player.
Yeah, looking at Bournemouth, he looked okay, and I think I agree with your assessment of him there. He's not necessarily the right man for the long term, but I thought both of the Bournemouth front men looked fairly much better than anything that Chelsea have got at the moment. At least Musset was pretty handy himself as well. The difficulty is that January is by its nature a distressed market. If you're looking for a big key player in January, then you're in trouble. And so therefore prices are hyped. And also, of course, it's a time when availability is shortened. Nobody really wants to move club in January. Players, particularly strikers, need a bit of a pre-season to get into a system and to find the culture of a club and to get the best out of the coming games. So nobody really wants to move in January. And if they do, they tend to be in a bit of a state. So Chelsea need to be careful not to make silly decisions, as they have done in the past, of course. The most notable one being the enormous amount of money splurged on Fernando Torres 7-8 Januaries ago. In a lot of ways, maybe a player like Callum Wilson, one with lower expectations, one who isn't a big name striker, I think would be a far better bet than, say, Higuain, who's 31 and has never really been tried in a league with the absolute increased levels of demand of the Premier League.
Well, I mean, we kind of made we made the best decision we could 2 summers ago. Picked up Morata, not Lukaku. Don't need to get into kind of that. And Chelsea did make a play at a long-term striking option. It seems like it maybe hasn't panned out, and January is not the time to fix it. It just isn't. It's never a good moment. Dan Dormer, you've been good at putting Chelsea's expected goals, the shot map on in our scripts lately. As you can see, Chelsea with some good opportunities, some decent opportunities, and a lot of just other opportunities in there. And it's just, look, when your striker or other people on the team aren't scoring, it's really obvious, and it creates a lot of other issues. If you're up 2-0, 3-0, Leicester get one back, it's not a big deal. But the problem is we weren't. We were not winning, and therefore it creates a ton of issues. And that's why they get paid the biggest salaries, is because if you can find someone who can do it week in, week out, who can essentially have about 0.75 goals per match ratio, you are doing something really, really good. Just don't have it right now. I mean, Diego Costa, miss you, bud.
Hey, I think he's available.
He's not doing great. He's not doing great right now for Madrid either, and he's been a little bit of the bad Diego that we've typically come to see. Not good Diego.
It's Griezmann's fault. He's not standing up for him.
Sure, we'll blame it all on Griezmann, and he can take responsibility for it. Just like we can blame someone else. Cesc Fabregas wasn't getting him the ball. Antonio Conte was sending him texts. Whoever it is, never his fault. But when we look at the expected goals, the expected goals was 2-1 in Chelsea's favor to 0.9 for Leicester. Hazard off the bar, Willian on basically a tear, and could have just squared his shot up. Alonso off the post again, and actually now has the most shots off the post this season in the Premier League. So talk about just the opposite side of the coin is where Chelsea have tended to land. If you're expecting a shot to go in, you probably should expect it to do the opposite and then be pleasantly surprised at this point when it does make it into the net. And I generally thought for the first 45 minutes that we were very much in control of the game. We had Leicester City press back into their box. They weren't making much in terms of forward runs. We were sniffing things out appropriately. And the moment that goal happened, it completely just eroded it. And I think credit to Rudiger, who was the one interviewed after the match, who just talked about how it wasn't good enough and it was unacceptable. And I have a general feeling that the players understand in some capacity the level of gut punch that this is, and will respond accordingly. They've got some really good opportunities to do this versus Watford, which should be a little bit more of a free-flowing game. They've played a very nice style of football recently. You see Southampton obviously is not going to be a pushover, and the fact that new managers come in and they've got a little bit of positivity going. So these next two matches are a great springboard, Dan, to return to form and to find something that works. And I think as long as the players understand, their remit, which is to execute on the plan and hopefully, try to convert occasionally, and the manager is willing to be a little flexible with, his ideas or, to work with the team, then I think we should be able to restore that form. But I think the biggest challenge is, will they be able to do that in such short fashion?
It's funny, I was talking to some friends in the pub after the Man City win, and it was generally agreed that it would be completely in keeping with everything Chelsea usually do to beat Man City and then to go and lose to Watford and Crystal Palace. I don't want to put a down on it, and I'm not making that as a prediction, but I think a lot of people recognise that as a bit of a hallmark of this club sometimes. Watford and Palace, of course, are two places where Chelsea had real stinkers last season, and they will be desperate to turn those things around. But, with two games in very, very tight succession, Sarri was very, very keen to say after the defeat to Leicester that he wanted to get his players back out on the pitch, and he wanted them to be learning and correcting all the things that they were doing wrong. Then they've got some fast learning to do over the next few days, including, I would have thought, probably training on Christmas Day. So it's a tough old week for them. This is where they earn their money, and handsomely paid they are for it, of course.
And Dormer, I think part of the problem that we're facing as a team is, you say first half we were well in control. I think that's the issue. That's the illusion. So maybe we're controlling the ball well, but it's a 0-0 game. We're not in control of anything. We just have the majority of chances, and I think that we fail as a team to realize that even if we're maintaining that 70% possession, there are still plenty of opportunities for the opposing team to get decent shots on goal, and that's all you need to put one in the net, right? Leicester had 5 shots or 8 shots, 5 on net, and got a goal. And I think we're falling for this Arsenal-y mentality that, well, we had the majority of possession, so we deserve to win, or we have, that's not how you win matches. Possession is meaningless unless you do something with it. And I think we overinflate what we're doing with a bunch of mediocre short passes that don't lead to anything. And I think we just, at times, the mental sharpness is not there, because we're kind of doing this like, oh yeah, we'll eventually get something. And that's not a killer instinct. That's not what we need. We need to have the ball. We need to we need to press it and score with opportunities, instead of saying we're going to have 70% chances. So, maybe we'll do something with it later. I think that's the difference between what we saw with City. We knew that when we played City, you had to take your shot, because we weren't getting more than a handful of shots against them, right? And we put those away. And here, I feel like against lesser competition, Dan, Levene, you might disagree with me, but I feel like we just have a malaise. We just feel like most likely we'll get more opportunities. So, hey, if I miss this one, it'll be okay, because we'll get the ball back.
Totally agree. And the worry is that possession becomes an aim for the sake of possession. And you're right in saying that is a very Arsenal-y trait under Wenger. It's many people will of course be aware of the most famous game in this club's history, and it was a game where Chelsea had something like 20% possession. It might have even been less than that, and of course it resulted in them winning the European Cup. I don't propose that Chelsea play every game like that. None of us would have any fingernails left, and we'd all have goodness knows what going on in our hearts and our heads if that happened every game. But possession in itself is not an aim. It can't be just dead possession as an aim. There has to be some creativity there, and that's what Chelsea are lacking right now.
Yeah, I mean, but ultimately, we had possession that led to 5 shots on target, 17 total shots. I think there is a case to be made that you have so much possession that you're not you're becoming complacent with the fact that you're going to get another shot. But I think in my mind, still, I will defend the fact that the first 45 minutes were played very well, and outside of 2 pretty distinct chances, Hazard and Willian, there was not much going in the direction for Leicester in that first half. Any type of counter was really snuffed out. The ball was recycled well, and we were able to go again. And that really, it was a total Jekyll and Hyde moment for the first halves. We saw the best of what Chelsea had to offer outside of an end product in the first half, and then we saw the worst of what happens when this team has to face through some adversity against, and really didn't show up for the time after. Even with our substitutes, we've obviously praised Ruben Loftus-Cheek a lot this season, and he's kind of excelling and coming into form. Didn't really change the game fully when he came on. Same really with Giroud, and then Cesc for Jorginho was not great. We started being dispossessed heavily. We started, Conte had, was not able to kind of cloak himself in glory either. And I think Kepa was the only one, Brandon, who really probably gets to stand with some head held high after this match.
Yep, and unfortunately, that is all the time we have to go through this match, so I don't even get to talk about Kepa. Man.
Brandon, you can do whatever you want. Yeah. Talk about him.
No, here's the deal. We'll save it for a more important match. But look, brilliant footwork. He is, he's so good to watch. I can't wait to see him live in person. Anyways, Dan Dormer, let's move on to your man of the match poll for this one.
Well, you'll be happy. There were only 2 options, and I couldn't include 2 Chelsea players for this because it was a loss. So I included Kepa, who won with 69% of the vote, and then I threw a little fun one in there for Roy Hodgson for beating Man City at the Etihad, which is a wonderful accomplishment, and maybe takes the shine off our victory just a touch, unfortunately. But 31% for Roy. So congratulations, Roy, for beating Man City, creating a bigger storyline than the Chelsea loss, so that we could really hide our bad business under the radar. Thank you for that.
more importantly, Andrews Townsend. What a hit, son.
Oh, boy.
What a hit. All right, so here is the table as it stands. Liverpool still on top as of through Christmas, 48 points. Dan Levene, I'm pretty sure I heard a stat that the last team to be on top at Christmas and not win the league was Liverpool.
Is that true? Well,
let's see, 14, and whenever the last time they tried to make a title run, yeah, apparently, allegedly. I'm not going to stand behind it. It's just, I don't know. If I were them, they're probably still not super confident.
Yeah, I think an awful lot of Chelsea fans at the moment are very, very desperate for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City to get a real run of points going. The very last thing that most Chelsea fans want to see is Liverpool with their hands on that trophy.
Especially in the US, because the majority of fans over here are Liverpool and United fans, so it's just... It doesn't make life any easier. City in second on 44 points after that's 2 losses in the last 3 Premier League matches for them. That is unheard of under Pep. Third is Spurs, and they actually play later today, so we don't have their points included, but that wouldn't affect us either way. Chelsea in fourth on 37, tied now on points with Arsenal, who are in fifth. Thank you to our +4 goal difference. United skyrocketing to 6th under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer after they demolished Cardiff, and then Watford, Bournemouth in 7th and 8th respectively. So look, it's still United on 29 points, Arsenal, Chelsea 37, Spurs 39, City 44, Liverpool 48. It is a 3-horse race for the last 2 spots. It's going to be tight. Like, Chelsea can't afford to drop too many more matches like this season and expect to get away with it. So as we talked about real briefly, we will be heading to Watford for another Premier League match on December 26th, right after Christmas. Is this the traditional Boxing Day match, Dan Levene?
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of people maybe who don't have the familiarity with English sports will find it a bit of a surprise. You know, that this is a real part of the English sporting calendar. It's not something that's done anywhere else in Europe, and it's a real thing of tradition. Back in the day, of course, there used to be games on both Christmas Day and Boxing Day, if you go back to like the 50s and also before the war. And what often used to be the case is that you'd have a local derby on Christmas Day, the 25th, and then the local derby the other way on the 26th. So it was often, there were a few seasons where you had Chelsea playing Fulham one day and then Fulham playing Chelsea the next day. Boxing Day, the trip to Watford is a pretty fortuitous as fixtures go. If you've got to be away, it's not very far away. It's a nice, easy trip to make. The tube is running, so we should have a good crowd there.
Mike, as Watford stand, they just beat West Ham 2-0. They beat Cardiff 3-2 previously, drew Everton, lost to City, lost to Leicester. So as far as the form goes, Chelsea losing to Leicester, beating Brighton, beating City, losing to Wolves, beating Fulham. Look, it's Watford. It's another match. Like Sarri said, either they're going to bounce back in a good way or they're going to bounce back in a bad way.
Yeah, I think we need to realize that teams are going to play very compact, and we need to capitalize in that first 5 to 10 minutes to come out, grab a goal, and force them to play open football as opposed to letting them hang in matches looking for that one counter, which, Leicester got against us.
D. Dormer, my man, you get the last word on this. It's Watford. It's away. I mean, are you leaning towards happy or leaning towards nervous?
I generally think that when this team gets punched in the gut, and we've had some pretty poor results, that, we do find a way to bounce back into form and regain our shape, almost like one of those clowns that with the inflatable bottoms that you basically punch and it just, it goes backward, but then it pops right back up. And I think that's the type of, yeah, there you go. I think it's going to be that type of response. I think that, there's enough of an edge to a few of these players, not enough for me. I really wish there was just a little bit more steel. But you think about a Rudiger, you think about a Luiz, and even someone like Giroud, who's the Arsenal man brings a level of edge to this team that maybe it didn't have previously. there's some level of fight there that I think is going to see this last loss at home and want to have a response to it. So, I don't think you want to be the team playing Chelsea after a loss. I really don't. I think it's the same way, as a fan of the Patriots, who unfortunately have now lost 2 in a row. Yeah, you really don't like playing Tom Brady after a loss, and you really don't like playing them after a 2-game skid. So I think this is going to be a tougher game for Watford than they're probably anticipating after seeing how we played against Leicester.
I can only hope so, and that is what all of us as fans are hoping for and looking forward to. So anyways, that'll wrap up this episode. Thank you, listeners, for sharing this post-match defeat with us. Hopefully we're able to ask some questions to keep the conversation going, to maybe give you some answers, even though we claim to not be the ones who know what to do. Anyways, Dan Levene, it was an absolute pleasure to have you back. We are so excited to see you again, as we've mentioned multiple times. But yes, thank you for spending part of your Sunday with us.
Cheers. As I say, always great to be here, and looking forward to meeting you when you come over the pond very shortly.
Awesome. So gracious, and appreciate you putting up all those decorations for us. That is really, really just too kind of you all.
Yeah, and happy holidays to all of our listeners, for
absolutely.
Getting to spend the time with your loved ones, and if that includes us in some capacity, we greatly appreciate that.
'Tis the season, everyone, so we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, and if we don't talk to you for the new year, cheers. And until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.